I want to welcome to the webinar Daniel Cohn. He is the founder of SmartMail. He's also, really engaged with e-commerce retail companies as well as companies from SMBs all the way up to enterprise level companies who are they're trying to figure out how to do more with their email and customize their campaigns so they can get the best engagement out of it. Daniel and I spoke last year, I guess it was, and talked a little bit about live chat best practices for e-commerce. And then Daniel, you came back this year and wrote this just tremendous article for our blog, and I'll share that link. I'll share that link in the chat for our webinar here today. But it seemed like it might be worth talking people through this process that your company uses to help these companies from all over the world and of all sizes do more with their email. So thank you for joining us today. I know you're going to take us through a short presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good to see you. I mean, we've seen a bunch of each other, but it's good to finally be here.
Yeah.
So I think, so you're going to take us through a quick presentation on this process that you've explained to us on our blog. And then, as we go along, if you're watching, if you have any questions for Daniel, please send them into chat and I'll filter them through to him and we'll address them as we go. But Daniel, welcome. I'll turn it over to you to take it away for the presentation portion of this.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Carl. I really appreciate it. And any opportunity to talk about what we do and how we help companies personalize the email experience is always well appreciated. So let me just share my screen here, get this presentation up. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Yep, you can see my screen. Okay, cool. So my name's Daniel. Thanks for joining us today. If you want to get in touch with me, my email address is down there as well. So feel free to chat in the chat room or send me an email as well. But today I'm going to take you through what Carl was talking about. Just on the chat side, I'm going to take you through personalizing the customer journey through email and how we can actually achieve that beyond just personalizing a first name or sending a birthday campaign, like really understanding how to personalize an experience based on what people are doing on your website. So what I'm going to take you through on the following slides is, first we're going to define and understand what behavioral email actually is. And behavioral is really just another expression or explanation of personalization, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. We're going to explore the behavioral lifecycle. So I'll show you all the different types of behavioral campaigns or personalized campaigns that we can run through the entire customer journey. And then I'm going to show you the 3 highest converting behavioral campaigns that we send out with companies that we work with, and show you examples and sort of dig into it a little bit more. And then if you stick around at the very end, we've got some real life results, which I think are going to surprise you as well, when we'll share with you some of the actual numbers and the revenue generated from some of these campaigns I'm going to be taking you through. So that's basically what we're going to take you through. And yeah, again, if you've got any questions, feel free to just send them through. Just really quickly about who we are as a company. SmartMail, we're a done-for-you email marketing service, helping e-commerce companies send highly personalized emails to their customers. And so hopefully by the end of this little presentation, all of that will become much clearer around what we do. Here's just a quick snapshot of some milestones that we've achieved as a company. Now, I usually show this slide not to brag or to make people feel like we're amazing, but really just to show you some of the achievements we've had, and to really acknowledge that what I'm about to show you is really based on real experience. It's not theoretical. It's not based on blog posts that we've read or that we think might work. This is all based on actual experience. And we've generated a lot of revenue, you can see, for the companies that we work with. We've sent a lot of emails. We've sent over 531 million emails. We've captured a lot of emails, and we certainly know how to get really strong open rates for the companies we work with. So just a quick snapshot of some milestones that we've achieved. And yeah, so jumping straight into it. And again, if you've got any questions, feel free to shoot them through as we go. But I just really quickly, really high level, when it comes to email marketing and email marketing strategies, there's really 2 sides to the whole email marketing equation. The first is sending newsletters. And I think everybody's familiar with what a newsletter is. You've got your entire list. You send one email to your entire list. There's nothing so intelligent behind it. Very important. A lot of companies do it. Some companies do it, once a day, once a week, once a month. You can use MailChimp. There's tons of different platforms to do that, and to generate additional revenue through your newsletter campaigns. And on the other side of the email marketing strategy, we've got what we call behavioral email. And this is where we start to look at the whole personalization of the email experience. And to sort of summarize what behavioral email is, we sort of like to think of behavioral emails as contextually relevant emails based on what a customer browsed or bought on your website. Now, if you're watching this and you're not an e-commerce store, this presentation is mainly geared for e-commerce, but you can also apply these ideas and these theories to if you're a SaaS product or if you're selling a business service or something else. I guess the theory is the same, and you just sort of change the application slightly. So basically, behavioral is based on what people do or don't do on your website, and sending them emails in relation and in reaction to those events that they did or didn't do, or things they did or didn't browse. So if we look at the behavioral life cycle, we'd like to break the customer journey down into these 4 stages. And then in each 4th stage, which we'll talk about in a second, there's all these different types of email programs and campaigns that we can run that are personalized in each section of the journey. So we have, on the left side, we have the welcome sequences, and they could be welcomed from the first time they actually get onto the site, or they could be welcomed after their first purchase. Then we have, in the purple category, we have browsing campaigns, which is where a lot of people are familiar with shopping cart abandonment. All these types of campaigns are related to when a customer is in the browsing phase, they haven't actually bought anything. And then on the other side of the order, we have what we call post-purchase campaigns and retention campaigns, which are directly related to something somebody bought. So on the post-purchase side, it could be a replenishment campaign, telling them, maybe to top up on their next box of cigars or whatever it is that they bought that might require replenishment. An email for a rating and review of the product that you purchased. And then further down the line, we have retention campaigns, which are really campaigns that are built and sent out to try and retain a customer or get them to buy something else and keep them in your purchasing cycle for a longer period of time. So that's basically what we call the behavioral life cycle. And that sort of covers the entire slew of all the different marketing campaigns and behavioral campaigns that we can run in the life cycle. Now, if we sort of break it down a little bit more, what we've found, what we've experienced from this whole this whole image, is that the most valuable area that you can generate the most amount of revenue from when sending out these types of campaigns is usually the 2 areas before an order is actually made. So specifically in the browsing section. And so that's what I'd like to focus on today and show you some personalized campaigns. When customers are browsing, everyone's familiar. Actually, let me just go further a little bit more before I was going to say what I was going to say. So when we talk about email browse campaigns, to sort of paint the picture, most people, like I was saying before, are familiar with shopping cart abandonment. And that's the most common idea of a browse campaign, where someone adds an item to their cart but didn't complete their order. So you want to send them an email. They showed a lot of purchase intent. They came really close to completing their order, but they didn't quite get there. So you want to send them that email. And I guess what we like to do, and the reason why I've got a whole funnel here, is because there's a lot more people who were browsing on your website and they were doing a lot of things, but they didn't actually add any items to their cart. And so what we like to do is try and create campaigns targeting product browsers who browsed the product page but didn't add an item to their cart, or category browsers who actually browsed the category page but might not necessarily have gotten to the product page, and so on and so forth, all the way up the entire funnel. And so what that allows is that you're actually reaching all of your site browsers, as opposed to just people who abandon the checkout. And what that allows you to do is reach a lot more people with contextually relevant information, which I'm going to show you in a minute with some examples, as opposed to just cart abandoners. And so you end up sending a lot more of these personalized emails as well. So that's basically the premise. And that's basically how we like to view the customer journey when it comes to browsing and the different types of campaigns. So, you know, before I jump in and show you some of these campaigns and actually dig into the campaigns in a bit more detail, I just also thought it was worth sharing. At this point, a lot of people go, you know, it might sound really interesting, but it might not work for my business or my product. What we've found with these types of email campaigns is it really doesn't matter, you know, what products that you're selling. It really doesn't matter how much your products cost, which country you're selling in, whether it's, I think we have someone from Romania here, from the UK. Doesn't matter if you're in Barcelona, Carl's in Barcelona. It really doesn't matter where you are, or it doesn't matter what you're selling, if it's a B2B product or a B2C product. The ideas that I'm taking you through apply across the board because they're all related to the psychology of buying something and personalization, which is very psychological. So all of these things are irrelevant. Yeah, so that's basically that. So what we should do now is let me just take you through the 3 highest converting behavioral browse email campaigns. So the first one we have is a product browse email. And you can see off to the right, we have an example of that type of email. But basically a product browse email is when you are able to send out an email to someone who views your product page, but like we were saying before, didn't actually add anything to their basket. And like, as you can see the email, there's a gentle reminder, come back and take another look. The email's populated with the product details and the product information, product image, and below we add, you know, related product recommendations as well. So you can start to see how the personalization for that specific person, every product browse email that goes out is completely different, has completely different text, completely different imagery based on what each individual was browsing before they left your website. And so if we look at some of the results for a campaign like this, what we did a couple months ago is we sort of took some benchmarking numbers across all the different companies that we work with to try to get some averages. And on average, we usually see a 52% open rate on these types of emails and a 28% click-through rate. So, you know, if you're watching this and you are sending emails and you're active in email marketing, you already know that they're very, very high engagement rates, very hard to achieve those types of numbers. And the real reason is, again, it's that personalization. And Carl was talking about it before, with personalizing, you know, chat on a landing page. And this is the same thing. We're really taking the user experience and personalizing it in email. And the third metric is revenue per email sent. So for every email in this campaign we would send out, on average, you would be able to expect about $3.63. Now that's an average. It could be greater, it could be less, depending on companies and depending on your price, average order values and things like that. But that on average, we usually see $3.63 per email sent for a particular campaign like this. And so there's some of the metrics that you can expect to see for a campaign like this. So moving on to another campaign that is very personalized and contextually relevant based on what someone does is what we call the category browse campaign. And again, there's a lot of people who could be on a website browsing a specific category page without actually viewing any products, and then they leave your website. So they show less purchase intent, but still they were browsing something. So the idea with these campaigns is to send them an email, again, with a very gentle reminder, and populating the email with the category title that they were browsing. In this particular case, we've got category related recommendations, and that's something that we populate into the emails. And in some cases, we can have category related imagery as well. So in this particular example, it's very, very focused around the exact category that person was browsing. So it's no wonder that the engagement rates are really, really high with these types of campaigns. And so to have a look at some of the metrics for this particular campaign, the open rate and click-through rate is a little bit lower than the product browse campaign because the interest that these people showed is less, because again, they're not viewing any products, but still very high engagement with 43% open rate, 21% click-through rate, and about $1.82 revenue per email sent. So, you know, not bad going. And the other thing about these campaigns is when they're set up, you know, these campaigns are usually set up in automation platforms. And so they sort of, the entire strategy falls into what we call email automation. So a lot of these actually all of these campaigns are fully automated. So once you've set them up and they're running, they're kind of running in the background of your business. So that's just extra revenue being generated from these campaigns without you actually doing anything once you've actually set the campaigns up. So actually just checking in, Carl, you guys can hear me okay? Everything's cool?
Everything's great. It's coming through fine.
Yeah.
And just a reminder too, if you're for the audience.
I look good on camera. I'm looking good on camera.
You look great.
Oh, I know you can't see me on the camera. Okay. That was a joke, by the way.
Just a reminder too, and just a reminder to the audience too. If you do have a question, you can use your chat button at the bottom of the browser or the Zoom dashboard there to ask us a question. So Daniel, coming through great. Keep on going.
Okay, cool. So the third campaign that we like to send out with retailers or e-commerce stores is what we call the homepage browse campaign. And this particular campaign is really focused on people who were on your homepage and they just bounced. And again, so we're looking further all the way to the top of the funnel. Very, very low purchase intent. A lot of people exiting your homepages on average. And the idea with this email campaign is really to just stay top of mind, to be able to deliver some sort of communication piece that has some relevance on some level without being able to be overly personalized, because again, all we know about this person at the moment is they just came to our homepage. Somehow we were able to capture their email address. And we can talk about capturing email addresses later down the line. And what we do with this email is, because there's a lot less intent, we really just populate this email with the top sellers across the site. So you can see the 6 top sellers for this particular company. And all we're trying to do is stay top of mind and try to just give them something that might give them another reason to sort of scroll through these products or possibly click and come back and take another look at the website. And so we've actually found that sending one of these intermittently to homepage abandoners can be really helpful. And on some level, there is this level of personalization as well. And so we like to create this campaign as well. And if we start to look at the metrics for this particular campaign, again, lower open and click-through rates, 26% open rate, click-through rate 19%, but still very high engagement. And a lot of that is related to the time that we're actually sending these emails as well. They're very contextually relevant timing-wise to when they were actually on the website. And again, the revenue per email sent is still lower, but still 84 cents per email sent when you're sending thousands of these emails every single month adds up to a nice total, hopefully, if you're running these programs. So that's basically the 3 campaigns. And what I wanted to do now is just show you some Google Analytics results. Now, these results are not for the company that I was just showing you the examples of. There's another company that we work with that have been lucky enough to give us ability to share a screen like this. We've had to block out a lot of the other information, but just to share what the performance looked like for some of these campaigns. And this company was a relatively big e-commerce store. But you can see here, we've got an e-commerce, we've got the conversion rate from some of these campaigns. So you can see the product browse campaign converted 6.48%, the homepage browse 2.76%, et cetera, et cetera. But you can also see that the abandoned cart campaign, which is usually the most commonly known campaign, converted less than the actual product browse campaign. So there's a lot of opportunity if you're running like a product cart abandonment campaign and not doing or running these other personalized behavioral emails. There's a lot of opportunity possibly to add and layer in more of these behavioral campaigns into your email marketing strategy. And then some revenue numbers over a 30-day period for some of these. Yeah, I think I've actually got a zoom in here, so hopefully you can see this screen a bit better. You can start to see some of the revenue numbers. And interestingly, again, like with cart abandonment, it generated $33,656. The product browse campaign a lot more. The category browse campaign very close to that. And a lot of the reason why in many cases you can generate more revenue from some of these other campaigns further up the funnel is because there's a lot more product browsers than cart abandoners. And so a lot of it can just come down to numbers and volume of email that you can actually send. And so hopefully, when you start looking at these numbers, if you are sending cart abandonment campaigns, but not some of these other personalized campaigns, it might be something that you might want to look at as a next step in your personalized behavioral email marketing journey for your e-commerce store. And so that's basically, I guess, the main information that I wanted to share with you guys today. Just off the top of my head, Carl, I remember we were talking before, we spoke about putting this together. And one of the things that I remember we spoke about, but I haven't actually mentioned it here, is how to actually get this done and how to actually implement these campaigns. And there are quite a lot of automation tools. There's a big difference between email marketing tools like MailChimp and Campaign Monitor and actual automation tools that focus and specialize in not just sending emails, but actually automating and data capture so you can actually send a lot of these types of emails. So there are a bunch of tools. There's one called Klaviyo, there's one called GetVero. There's a whole bunch if you're using Shopify, if you go into the Shopify App Store, there's a bunch of different tools you can look at. Us as a company, I'll do a little bit about what we do. We also have our own platform, but what we do a little bit differently at SmartMail is we have our own platform that is able to carry out and implement all of these campaigns for people. But we actually are a fully managed service as well. So we're not just a SaaS tool. We actually drive. You got me there? Hello?
Yeah, we're here. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, no, I just got to, anyway. So we actually implement and do all these things to set all these campaigns up for the companies we work with as well. That includes all the things on the screen here. So we manage and create responsive templates. We create all the automation rules. We create the subject lines. We offer access to real-time reports. We do A/B testing. So we actually do all of these things. We manage all the data capture for the companies we work with. So being able to implement these campaigns is something that we do on behalf of the companies we work with. Because if you're watching this, you're probably very busy in your own business, and having to become an expert in this specific area of not just digital marketing but also email marketing is probably something that you don't want to have to pick up and become the guru in the next couple of days. So that's basically how we work at SmartMail. And if any of this is interesting for you, or you'd like to continue the conversation, feel free to visit our website, fill out a form on our website to get in touch with us, request a call back. And if, like Carl said, if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to stick around and talk about what I just took you through, or any other email marketing related questions maybe if you've got other questions. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Daniel. That was great. That was awesome. I actually have a two-part question for you just to kind of kick things off. The first part of that question.
Worries.
Cool. So the first part of that question is, okay, let's say I'm a small business owner and I'm looking to try to do one of these campaigns myself, or do a customized, personalized, email, is there a way that I could get started on something like this by myself? And then the second part of that question is, what's the tipping point at which point I should think about outsourcing to a service like SmartMail? When do I get to a point where I should really start thinking about having somebody help me manage these campaigns. So is there a basic thing I could do to do a customized, personalized email, maybe one of those campaigns that you were talking about? And then the second is at what point should I consider a service?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think so to answer that question, I think at the very least, whether you're turning over $100 a month or $100,000 a month, I think at the very least, there's a bunch of these campaigns that you should be running. So the cart abandonment campaign is definitely a campaign that every website should be running, just purely because of the intent and the strong intent that someone came so close to buying something. So anyone who's just starting out should really be looking at running a campaign like that. And there are some other, I guess, like default campaigns, like a welcome series, that we didn't really talk about on this call, but that was part of the sort of the browsing area of the life cycle. And there are a lot of tools that you can. I mentioned Klaviyo, and I was telling you offline that we're not really, in some sense, we are a platform as well, but this is a forum to sort of share and talk about openly a whole bunch of other platforms. So I think Klaviyo would be a really good platform if you're just starting out and you're not really ready for a fully managed service, because the other thing to your question as well is if you really are just starting out, there is a like a diminishing return on how much value you'll see by layering in all of these other campaigns. Not sure if you can still see my screen, but if I go back to
we can and also
see my screen.
We can still see your screen, yes. And then also just to clarify, the platform you're referencing, Klaviyo, how do you spell that?
Klaviyo, Klaviyo.com.
Very good.
Yeah, you got that? So when we're looking at this entire life cycle, there are some default campaigns that you probably could set up through a platform like that, which are really easy. But like running a homepage browse campaign, if you have low traffic volume and you're doing maybe a couple hundred orders a month, it's probably not necessary to be running a campaign like that. If you're still relatively small, or you've just started out, focusing on the retention side, which is all the way at the very end, might not necessarily be a good starting point either. And maybe it's something that you could get to 6 or 8 months down the line after you've layered all these other campaigns in. So it is a good question, and I think starting out, there's those mandatory types of campaigns, and I think looking at like a managed service, like we usually start working with companies when they start getting a little bit more traction. So they're starting to turn over, maybe at least $50,000 a month in sales. They're doing a few thousand orders a month. They've sort of come through that proof of concept of their e-commerce store or their online store, and they're really starting to sort of look to get to that next level. And that's when these additional campaigns can really start adding that extra value. Did that help answer the question?
I think so, yeah. So Trisha had a question. It kind of so it comes back to kind of this DIY approach to it too. And Trisha says, she runs a wedding venue, and it's not huge numbers. It's not an e-commerce shop, right? So they're speaking directly to brides who come onto their venue site, and they're considering probably against a number of other venues. And she's saying, to be able to connect with each bride that was actually on their site would be awesome. But she's not really too sure how you capture emails of somebody who browsed but didn't do anything, right? Or how do you even begin that automation process and figure out who was there but didn't make a decision? Do you have any tips, like, DIY tips on how to do that for a small business?
Yeah. So in a lot of these platforms, I'm not sure if it doesn't sound like you're, in this particular example, there's an e-commerce platform, like a shopping cart being used. But a lot of these platforms, these automation tools, actually have direct plugins into the shopping cart. So for example, you can just connect your Shopify store or your BigCommerce store or your Magento store directly into some of these automation tools. There's also one for ActiveCampaign, which is another really great tool that you could use. And once you plug those you make that connection, and it's a very simple connection. You don't really need developers to connect the dots in passing a lot of the information from your Shopify store or your platform into your automation tool. Then all that data is being passed in automatically. When it comes to some of these campaigns that we're looking at on the browsing side, there are some additional customizations that you might have to get a developer to do for you. But most of these platforms have very, very simple, clearly laid out documentation that explains how to actually do a lot of this. And they're very well geared, and they've got like very good resourcing, pages and help centers to help you capture that information or share with your developer what they would actually need to do if you want to go down the path of doing it yourself, to capture that information and pass it directly off your website and pass it directly into your platform. So it's depending on how much detail you want to capture, will determine how sort of involved the documentation would need to be for a developer. But it's not overly complicated, and a lot of these platforms really do a very good job at sharing how to actually get that done and pass that information from your site into the platform. But there is a bit of development work involved.
Got it. Okay, thanks. Trisha, I guess you can answer via chat. Did that help shed some light on your question? I know. Got it. So Trisha's also asking, when Daniel, in your answer, you're talking about platforms, I think. So Trisha, that would be like the tool, like a MailChimp tool, or one of the products that Daniel was mentioning. Those are, when we say platforms, those are kind of the software that you're using. So the same way you might be using Olark Live Chat, or the same way you might use SmartMail, we just use the word platform to describe the software, because there's a number of different functions that happen within that software, and it's kind of this technical term that means like, that's a platform you're using.
And I think in this particular case, it sounds like a really good tool that you could look at is called ActiveCampaign. And you can do a lot of really nice integrations with ActiveCampaign, and you could actually apply a lot of the theory of what we were talking about if you're not a strict e-commerce store, but you could take a lot of the ideas and target people who browse certain pages and send them emails in relation to what they were browsing. And you could do that through ActiveCampaign. And we actually use ActiveCampaign internally just on our lead generation and servicing side, and it's a very, very good platform or app, or whatever how you like to refer to it, to actually do a lot of these things outside of like e-commerce as well.
Sure. And Trisha, I guess I'd add to that too, if you're not, I guess having live chat on your site may help that. So if somebody is browsing but doesn't actually submit a form or give you their email through a sign up, then they may chat with you, and you could capture their email through the chat, because oftentimes you can either ask them for it, or you can use some code to grab that automatically if they've logged in at a certain point before. It might be, Trisha, it might be worth sending just a quick follow-up note to myself, and I can include Daniel, and maybe we can help you with some other ideas on how to get those emails of people who are browsing but don't necessarily fill out a form or don't chat. I mean, it is a little tricky. You can't quite just grab everybody's email without them knowing about it. But there may be some ways to do that. So Trisha, send me an email, Karl, Karl @olark.com. I'd be happy to share some ideas with you. And Daniel, I think, we can help Trisha out a little bit.
Yeah.
So we got a question here from Greg. Greg says he runs a ticketing company similar to Ticketmaster, but it's on a smaller scale, right? So he's got 300,000 former ticket buyer emails in his database. And so some of these SaaS programs get really expensive when you have that many contacts. Yes, I have seen that firsthand. Do you have, so I think what he's asking here, so he's already using a specific type of email automation program. But Daniel, is there a way, if you've got a list, like if a giant list of contacts falls in your lap, congratulations, that's awesome. But you don't have the budget to really do marketing automation with a list of that size. Do you have any suggestions for maybe how do you get that down into smaller manageable chunks, or do something with it without breaking the bank?
Yeah, that's a good question. like one of the things that I would do straight off the bat is, if it's possible, to actually segment the list out based on people who have opened or clicked previously, and take a chunk of the list and just try to re-message them, but just people who have previously opened or clicked. And that way you're going to get a much smaller segment of the list, but they're your more engaged audience of the list as well. And, without knowing too much more about the list itself, that would definitely be my starting point. And starting to look at least people who have engaged on some level previously, whether it was the last 6 months or the last year, if that's possible. I don't know if there's any other data points you have on each profile in the list. It might be worth trying to take another point that you have in each person's profile, it leads, or it can sort of direct you to some level of engagement in the past. Or if you've got their previous, I think you said that they were previous buyers. If they, maybe if they've bought a lot of stuff before, if you've been able to track that, people who have bought more than 3 times before, or high frequency of buyers, or if their total spend, if you've got any of that information, and maybe just take that segment first and start mailing those guys. So I try to look for something that you already have access to in your data of that list, and segment the list that way, and start trying to message those people in a personalized way from that angle.
Yeah, I think I'd follow on to that too when I'm thinking about ticket purchases. If you have regional data, so maybe you can follow up with a certain region if there's an upcoming concert in that area, right? So maybe you can start to target it based on where they live and what's coming up in their area, or maybe by what they've purchased in the past, which is to your point, Daniel. If they bought Jimmy Buffett tickets in the past, and there's another Jimmy Buffett tour happening, then maybe that's a time to follow up with those specific purchasers to remind them that it's time to buy again and go on tour with Jimmy Buffett. But
Yeah.
it's going to come down to the different fields that are in that data, and then just trying to think of creative ways that you can put something in front of them that will influence them.
And just one other thing, I'm not sure which platform you use, but there are some automation tools, including ours, that basically don't charge by list size. So traditionally, a lot of ESPs will charge by your list size. Like if you've got 300,000 people on your list, that's how much you pay for. A lot of platforms in the automation space might charge on what we call active subscribers. So you might have 300,000 people on your list, but if they weren't active, meaning if we weren't able to capture any data on those people in a given month, they can still stay in the database, but then you're not going to be charged for it. You only get charged based on people who have actively been able to capture some data on. So that's basically how our pricing model works. I'm not going to get into like a whole pricing conversation, but there are probably some other platforms out there as well that you might want to look at, that rather than charging just on list size, which is probably what's killing you, seeing if you can get billed on an active subscriber basis. And that's also can be a common billing metric for some automation tools. So that's something else you might want to look at as well when it comes to billing with these platforms.
That's a great tip. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg. That was a great question, and great question too, Trisha. I appreciate that. And I shared my email in the chat, Trisha. If you do want to send me a follow-up note, I do want to try to help you out if I can. So for anybody else in the audience who's using the hand raise function, if you have a question, just feel free to ask it in the chat. There should be a button at the bottom of your dashboard that you're viewing this webinar in that says chat, and that should expand a chat panel, and in that you can use that to ask us questions. We got a couple more minutes here, I guess. So Daniel, let me see if I have one more question for you here in my bag of questions. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Carlos. So the subscription costs for Daniel's service for SmartMail. So if you go over to smartmail.io, there is information there. I think they can help you out with pricing information for subscription to their service.
Yeah.
Many, I think you can talk to Daniel or somebody on his team about a demo, and they'll happily walk you through that. And I think for other services that are out there, usually they make their pricing costs available on their website, or it just takes a quick email to connect with somebody. So, as you're doing your research, I'd encourage you to reach out to different platforms on their website. Daniel, so do these customized emails like annoy people or freak people out? So I think, what we're talking about here a little bit is some of that magic that we do as marketers on the back end to give somebody something that they didn't know they need. What's the user response to these? How do you overcome maybe a negative response if somebody responds negatively to a personalized email?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. Ironically, the people that freak out the most about these campaigns are the owners of the websites. But it's, from the numbers that I was showing you, the engagement rates are so high with these campaigns. And usually what we experience is there is a bit of a freak out about, we're going to bombard our customers, they're going to get too many of these emails. But when you set these campaigns up properly, there are filters in all these automation tools where you can say, hey, I don't want to send, or I only want to send one email in a given date range to all these people, so we're not bombarding them. And so there are ways to reduce the volume of emails that one particular person can actually get. But when they do actually get these emails, like we were saying before, the engagement rate is so high, and it's actually the opposite. People actually really like these emails because a lot of the times people could be shopping on a site, they could be browsing online, and all of a sudden they see a news clip come up, or their kids walk in the door, or their boss just walked in, and they just get distracted. And sending them an email with the content that they were browsing before can also be really helpful. And so while a lot of business owners might think, oh, I don't want to make people think that I'm stalking them, or there is that stigma attached to it. But I think at the end of the day, these campaigns don't annoy people purely because just the metrics we were looking at and the engagement rates, and we've never really experienced anyone to that effect saying it's too much for us, or can we tone it down? So ironically, like the biggest concern is always from the business owner. But once we actually start running these campaigns and they start running in the wild, they start to see the not just the revenue that can be generated, but the engagement rates as well. And so because not just the open rates, but the click-through rates, meaning they actually are looking at the emails and they actually are coming back to the website. So there isn't, in actuality, there isn't such a bad effect at all, really. Of sending out these campaigns, and in fact, people actually, from the numbers, really like them. So I think that's usually what I tell people. And
let's see. Yeah, okay. Milos has a great question. I was actually just going to ask this same question, and maybe you can do this in about 2 minutes because then we need to wrap up. So Milos asks, what's the limit of emails you recommend to send to the same customer in a week or a month? And I was going to ask the same question. Let's say I have a set number of newsletters that are going out, and then I want to add into the mix customized newsletters. Do you have a sense of what the breaking point is for the receivers of these emails? What's the number that you recommend sending to people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So just really quickly, the whole idea of your regular newsletters, like we had that slide before, regular versus behavioral. The regular newsletters, you just keep sending those out. There's no real crossover in terms of the strategy. So you stick to your regular newsletters plan, whether it's daily. We work with companies that mail twice a day, and they're still sending these behavioral emails. So one shouldn't really negate the other on that level. And then when we start looking at these on behavioral emails in more detail, we usually limit the frequency to one in about 5 to 7 days. So if I came onto a site today and I triggered one of these campaigns and I got one of these campaigns, maybe it's the cart abandonment campaign, and then I came back to the site either 2 hours later or 2 days later and I abandoned a product page, you wouldn't get that second email or that second sequence. You would only get one email or one series of emails. We usually set it to 5 to 7 days. Now that can change because that's the theory, but the application, if you're selling mattresses and there's a 30-day purchasing cycle on a mattress, you might want to send the second email 10 days later, and then a third one, 20 days later, because it takes someone 30 days to buy and make a decision on a mattress, as opposed to someone who's buying a pair of Nike shoes. They make a decision maybe in 45 minutes after they've left the site. So there's a different frequency in a series of emails you can send for a specific campaign, but the actual volume of campaigns we would usually limit to 5 to 7 day. And if you're really, really concerned, 10, 15 days. But beyond that, it's probably a bit overkill. But yeah, I think if you start at 5 to 7 days and see how that goes, and if you don't get any negative feedback, then that keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Hopefully that helps answer your question there, Milos.
Yeah, it was a good question.
Is it okay? One last question, then we got to wrap up for the day. So Nicoletta asks, is it too much to send one regular newsletter a day?
No, well, it depends. I mean, if you've got something interesting to say, if you've got a product at a really good price that's worthy of promoting, then send it. If you're just trying to like scramble to come up with something and just emailing for the sake of emailing, then you might want to think twice. And a lot of the times, like I like to use the so what test. So in copywriting, they like really successful copywriters say that if you write copy, whether it's for a landing page or for a blog headline or whatever it is, and you read the copy, and at the end of the copy you can say, well, like, so what, who cares? Then the copy's not good enough. And I think you can do that with your welcome email, or with your newsletters as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a consumer myself, getting one newsletter a day might be a bit much, but the types of newsletters that I get on a daily basis are more like a roundup of news stories, or maybe if there's an interesting forum where I'm a contributor and I want to know what people have written that day.
Right, exactly.
Those tend to be more informational, and they're a bit more objective. It's not a newsletter about shoes one day and a newsletter about shoes the next day and the next day and the next day. So,
yeah, and also, if you're a deals-based site and you're known for like really good deals, you want to promote your deals. Like, that makes sense. But if you're sort of just kind of pushing out something that's really not that exciting or sexy to tell, I think if it doesn't pass the so what test, I wouldn't send the emails out.
Yeah. So Daniel, we got to wrap up. I think the Zoom webinar is going to be finished here in just a second. So real quick,
okay.
Everybody your email again in case they want to reach out. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure. It's here we go. Daniel at smartmail.io. So it's at the bottom. Oh no, where's my email address? There it is. Can you see my screen still?
Yep. Daniel, DANIEL at smartmail.io. Hey everybody, listen, thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate having you on the webinar. Daniel, thanks so much for all the information today. Let's take the conversation online. It may be worth a follow-up webinar at a certain point, because I know email questions are prolific. So thank you again, everybody. Keep this channel open for another minute or two, but we're going to shut down the recording and say goodbye for the day. And
thanks, tune in, guys. Thanks, Carl. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that was awesome. Our next webinar is coming up on May 18th, I believe it is. So 2 weeks from today. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about CRMs again. So join us again on May 18th. But otherwise, thank you again. Have a great day wherever you may be.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thank you.
And we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.